Hypothyroidism, or underactive thyroid, is a condition that affects many women and some men around the world. Again, this condition can have numerous factors, but we're going to talk about some of the common ones that have been identified. So yet again, this is a condition that I was diagnosed with. And very interestingly, if you know a lot about thyroid disease, I was diagnosed hypothyroidism and then Hashimoto's, and then was told I had goiter. And then later on, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is not possible because they are completely the opposite things. But that's just, goes to show where my body was at the time and all the kinds of fun things that I was doing. And, but today we're specifically going to be talking about hypothyroid. And generally, so hypothyroid left untreated in the sense of emotional components will often morph into the Hashimoto's diagnosis. So it doesn't always, but oftentimes that's what the case will be. Is so if we don't listen to the initial things that hypothyroid are telling us, then Hashimoto's ends up being the speaking up a little bit louder. Okay, so some of the emotional drivers behind these things. Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and download. It really helps us to continue to create all this great content for you and others, and lets us know if we're meeting the needs of the community. Today, we are covering the emotional drivers behind hypothyroid issues and Hashimoto's. Okay, so one of the main core emotional drivers behind hypothyroidism is issues around vulnerability and lack of self-confidence. So that can sometimes occur in a childhood home where a child may feel a good deal of pressure and that the expectations on the child may be unrealistic or unattainable or unreachable. Okay, so that can happen when caregivers or authority figures might be critical or judgmental as a way of motivating a child towards goals or behaviors. So that would become a core belief for the child at young ages that they are unsupported in life, right? Where things become a lot of effort to be not criticized or to be accepted or not rejected, right? That there's a lot of work that goes into that. And then because of a perceived lack of support, then the person will, in essence, give up, right? So rather than risk verbal criticism or judgment from a parent or a primary caregiver or an authority figure, then it's better to just submit and retreat. And that's really a subconscious choice, but it causes the body on a physiological level to sort of slow down and to suppress or repress. And that really can actually affect our hormone production. So as that belief system progresses into adulthood, we find that these individuals will often develop a nihilistic or pessimistic coping skill, right? So nothing's going to work for me, or it's going to be too hard, or those kind of things. They become a little bit what we might call a negative Nancy, right? And it's done for a purpose, right? It's done to help the person not get their hopes up so that they won't be disappointed by the inevitable unhappy ending that will likely occur. And again, this is from programming usually in our childhood. Now, these people will want to change, grow, succeed, but they seem to be stuck in the past. So they're trying to gain the support that they feel like they never received. So they will self-sabotage their success. And honestly, the cycle is exhausting and fatiguing, and that can cause brain fog and extreme strain on the body. Now, over time, this can become Hashimoto's when we add on a component of over responsibility. So you're already feeling under-supported, and then you add on this belief that you need to be responsible for others. That can further repress or suppress the body's ability to cope. And that leaves people feeling responsible for everything and everyone, yet not wanting to be responsible for anything, right? They don't want to be responsible for anything and anyone. So Hashimoto's also can have roots in lack. So due to programs of lack that you experienced in childhood, and that can be lack of nurturing, lack of time, lack of food, lack of protection, lack of money, lack of resources, right? Then they are now subconsciously sabotaging abundance in our adult life. So these people can actually really fear making a mistake. And that goes back to criticism in the beginning, right? So hypothyroidism or thyroid issues often have their genesis in fear of criticism. So if criticism was prevalent in your environment as a child, then, and it could even be passive-aggressive criticism, it could be sarcasm that you perceived as criticism, or oftentimes I've heard parents, and frankly, I've probably done this myself, where you think, well, unless they know what's wrong, they're never going to change it. So we focus on the what's wrong in our mind. And children do not need to be hearing what's wrong from their parents, right? Doesn't mean we don't correct or we don't, have that conversation. But if criticism is the higher experience, if that's what they're feeling the most of, then that's what gets wired into the body. And it's very difficult to produce have a very happy hormone production or an abundant hormone production if you feel like when you do things, right, because you need, your thyroid is really regulating a lot of that stuff. And so to be active, to be doing things, to have the energy and the wherewithal to be doing all of these stuff, if you think that what you're going to get from the doing is criticism, the body's going to suppress your ability to do because it's trying to keep you safe from the criticism. So that's the some of the drivers behind thyroid dysfunction in and of itself. But then you add on over responsibility and you've bumped it up into what we now know to be or call Hashimoto's. Okay, so again, speaking of, Hashimoto's, hardship, struggle, those are belief systems and oftentimes are ancestral belief patterns. So it's almost like coming from a family of struggle or a family of hardship. It's kind of the story, the ancestral story. There's also a real fear that people will drain and deplete you beyond recovery. That's if you're overgiving or you're thinking you're overly responsible, but what you are getting is a lot of criticism, that becomes a very draining process. And sometimes we're carrying generations of ancestral pain, and that becomes really draining and depleting on our system. So as a way to cope, then you often get caught in the cycles of blame. So you see yourself as a victim, and seeing yourself as a victim helps you keep safe from overcommitting or getting too involved with others. So that often results in us staying small. And if we stay small, others may not notice us, and then that keeps us from having to take on even more responsibilities. And in the staying small, again, that is affecting our hormone production, right? To stay small, that has a direct effect on our hormone production. So resolving these limiting beliefs and releasing the cycles of overwhelm and over-responsibility and struggle and hardship, that's what really can give our body permission to start up-regulating our hormones in a healthy way. Right? If it's safe for us to go out and engage and do without fear of criticism or control, then our body will align with that and produce more hormones that clear our head, clear our thinking, give us energy, allow us to do more because now we have a little bit more of a healthy relationship around boundaries. And as we like to say, the way out of this condition, with most instances of disease, is by going inside the mind, inside the subconscious programming that's wired these beliefs and helped us develop these conditions. So what we are going to go after is those initial received or perceived messages from our parents or our caregivers or our environment that we registered in our body and our mind as a lack of support. When we go in and we rewrite or rewire those messages, then we can input something different there, right? We can put support, and we can put positivity instead of criticism. And in the end, our goal is to put the power back where it belongs, and that's back inside of you. And that means you will be the biggest support for you. So, not that we negate that and that we allow someone to stay where our parents are not supporting us, or our parents are criticizing us, or we're expecting criticism and judgment from every angle. No, we go back and we resolve those filters, and we change that so that when our filters change, we hear criticism less, we see criticism less. And in fact, our personal behavior and our power, what we move into and the choices that we make in the relationships that we choose to be a part of, and the jobs that we take or the places that we put our time and energy, are less likely to garner criticism or rejection or judgment, because that's not where our filters are set anymore. Our filters are set for abundance, support, for connection, rather than over responsibility. When we rewire those things, the body is free to start regulating that hormone production naturally and upregulating those hormones that we need to give us the energy to do those better things and move into those better choices. And that can happen really naturally in our own bodies when our mind is congruent with those things, right? So our body's just following the mind. We really help the mind and change the mind and start producing those subconscious programs of abundance and reliability and support and all the good things, right? And connection. Then our body just follows suit and starts to produce our hormones in alignment with that. Okay, so that's sort of the basic drivers behind hypothyroidism and then Hashimoto's. And I hope that helps. Remember, again, if you or someone else is struggling with this condition, they are very real. The feelings are real, and the manifestations are very real. They're staying in alignment with what's going on in that person's mind. So we want to be sensitive around that and understand that their body will change and the symptomology will change when we're able to change what's happening in their mind. Okay, so thanks for joining us again on the Mind Change podcast. And remember, please leave those 5-star reviews, and you can tell us there if there's a particular disease or symptom or ailment you would like us to cover. We really want to be speaking about what you are interested in hearing about. So again, thanks for joining us as we are here changing the world one mind at a time.